So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, Aston Villa fans, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. And over the weekend, there was a flurry of links. Whether they're true or not, who knows? But they're fun players, and as you know, we like to talk about fun players. And just as I start the podcast, my headphones ran out of battery, so won't be able to hear anything that goes on. Won't be able to hear myself back. So do apologize. Two of those players, we're going to talk about them tonight. One in this podcast and one directly afterwards. Whereas if you are like and subscribe to the podcast, you will be able to see there's an upcoming podcast as well. I just made a mess of having the two of them one after another. So you guys get double trouble tonight. I hope that's okay. And it'll also make it easier for me to cut it up into audio. But the first person we're going to talk about today is Johan Bakayoko. I spoke about him with Dan Bardell on 1874 podcast late last week. And at the time, it was somebody that myself and Dan had been going back and forward with each other, talking about good fits for Aston Villa, players that we could find that could come in, that could be interesting, I suppose, that would be affordable, that would be gettable, that would be realistic. And over the weekend, there was tentative and spurious links to Johan Bakayoko made. There was, first of all, a cryptic link made to an unnamed Premier League club. And then there was something a small bit more specific, albeit only being reported in one outlet and by one person, to say that Aston Villa were a team that were interested. Also, other teams that have been linked with Johan Bakayoko in the past have been Liverpool, who I think, to be honest with you, probably have those positions pretty stocked at the moment. But you never know. It could be something that they try and revisit. Arsenal have also been a team that have been linked, along with Manchester City as well, have been linked with Johan Bakayoko. But that's not to say that Aston Villa are definitely out of the running or aren't in for him. So I said, look, we talk about him anyway. And I discussed him briefly with Bardell on the 1874 podcast. And you know, we were both excited by this player. We both picked him as somebody we wanted to speak about because he has the tangible traits that I feel that Aston Villa need to take us to the next level. And essentially those traits are pace and an eye for goal. And why do I start with those two attributes first? And I think it really just boils down to the fact that Aston Villa, a lot of people have been speaking about Aston Villa's defence, and that does need work, okay? But in a silo, we need to look also at our strike force. And when I say strike force, I mean the top four players, the players who will play the three behind Ollie Watkins or the three behind the striker in this setup. When you adjust for the amount of goals that we will have lost by selling John Duran and by selling and by Rashford not being in the team, that's going to be 16 league goals we're going to need to replace from last year. So that's going to have to come from somewhere. Now, may those players already be at the club? They absolutely may very well be. But I think Unai Emery is not happy with that. It's the setup that he has there in the three behind the striker. And I think he is going to look to inject fresh faces, fresh rotation in there, because it was one of the big reasons whereby we went on that charge towards the end of the season and started scoring goals. I won't say started scoring goals, but you know, we're more potent in attack, I suppose, is probably the better way to put it, towards the third of the season. And I think he's going to want to replicate that, because realistically speaking, no sign of Marco Asensio, and I never expected a Marco Asensio deal to be done before the 1st of July anyway, because I think it's probably going to be another loan, and I think all parties will be delighted with that. We're not going to get Rashford back. Rashford will not return to Aston Villa. I think that's pretty clear. Now, that to me means that I think that Unai wants to freshen up those two wing positions. And I know we're going to talk about the fact that people will talk about the fact we've got Daniel Mallon. And I know people will talk about the fact that, where's Morgan Rogers going to play? I don't want to see him on the right-hand side. I personally want to see Morgan Rogers in the 10 position. But the reason that I want pace and I want goals, as I said, is we're going to need to replace those 16 goals that we lost last year. We would have lost from last year. And Villa are going to have to go out and spend money to do that. Whether it's in a second striker to Ollie Watkins, or whether we bring in, we spread those goals around and become more of a dual threat, or maybe even a three-headed monster in ball carrying ability behind Ollie Watkins. That might be something that might work. And the two players we're going to take a look at tonight, Johan Bakayoko in this one, and Igor Pacheco in the second one, is that their traits are pacey, tricky wingers who've got an eye for goal. And what's not to like there? I think that's fair to say. So, Johan Bakayoko, as I say, once again, I will come to your comments now in a moment. I'm just waiting for them to load here. I've got some issue with them opening up here beside me, so I'm just waiting for them to load. I will come to your comments in a moment, but I will say that Bakayoko is like it's a spurious link currently, but he's a fun player, and as I say, myself and Dan Bardell have been looking at him and been putting together pieces on him over the last week. So just felt it apt that instead of the 4 minutes that myself and Bardell gave him on their podcast, that we would give a proper outing to Johan Bakayoko, because he bloody deserves it. So he's a 22-year-old winger, predominantly plays on the right-hand side, although can play on the left-hand side as well. He is a left-footed right winger, so hey, box ticked by Unai Emery. Now, saying that, he is both-footed. You will see him cross the ball with both feet, but the majority of his touches he takes with his left foot. I think it was something like 81% or 79% or something like that. The touches that he took last season were with his left foot, but his right foot isn't just for standing. And I think that's one of the things that, when like Leon Bailey would have been very left-footed, he would have had to have cut inside to take his shots. And I want my wingers, I want my winger, should I say, that does replace him, because in all likelihood he's going to be somebody that's going to be leaving the team. I would like them to be a bit less predictable, a bit more of a bit more of a rounded repertoire, should I say, when we get to that key area of being in and around the box. So if you want to think about Bakayoko, he's that quintessential modern inverted right winger. I actually think he could go on to play up top at some stage in his career. He's young enough, and I think he's got more of an eye for goal than he does an eye for an assist. And I'm not just saying that because he only had one assist last year. I'm saying that because when he takes shots and when he's his shooting technique, he never ever has any backlift. It's a very minimal backlift whenever he strikes the ball, and he creates such good power with that as well. Very good at and adept at bending the ball in tight areas around players as well. I watched him against I can't even remember the teams I watched them against, because I watched the two players and both of them being in their divisi. I'm going to mistake what games I watched them in. I think it was against Swally that they played, and I watched him, and he just basically drifted in from that left-hand side and just like he was peppered the goalkeeper with shots, and a lot of them were powerful drivers, but also he was able to bend it around the defender, and I think he clipped the butt of the post with one of them. It was just a beautiful shot. So it's not all the same type of shot whenever he does get his shots away, and I think that maybe he's intelligent running and playing at the Premier League level. He will get more intelligent at running. He's a very explosive one-on-one dribbler at the moment, and really does play from that half space. And I think that, over time, when he goes to the Premier League, it will obviously be at a bigger level, probably a faster game of football. But I can see the slowing down for him in the Premier League. And when it does, I think he's going to be a lot more adept at maybe playing in those tighter spaces without needing to be that Jeremy Doku type of, space on the wing, dribble like your traditional winger does. But for now, he's bloody good at it. So as I say, he's that kind of modern inverted right winger as well. Loves the ball at his feet, drives inside his left hand side, and looks to create from I was going to say from zone 14, but from that kind of 16 to 18 yards out, right in the edge of the penalty area, I suppose. He's not somebody who likes to dribble it right into the box or dribble directly to the end line. He's somebody who's going to want to attack the box an awful lot. And that's a criticism I've had of Aston Villa, specifically down the right-hand side, is that we always only look to go to the line. Bailey was somebody who either went to the line or cut across the corner of the box and tried to curl one in. So we were very predictable in what we did there, because Matty Cash was either going to cut back or go to the line. With somebody like Bakayoko, he will drive toward the box, and he will make it his business to try and to try and carry that ball as far as he possibly can. We'll speak about why that is obviously a detriment in a moment, but he is a primary chance creator for PSV when he is on the field. So last season, I'm just going to bring up the amount of games he played last season. I think he only played 22. I think he only 22 starts last year. Again, as I say, I get these two guys mixed up because they're both playing in the Eredivisie. So I'm just going to bring up his statistics so I don't get them wrong. He actually had 30 games played with 17 starts last year, equated to 1,579 minutes in the league, scoring 9 goals and assisting 1 goal. But he was very effective when he was on the field. A lot of people have said, well, why didn't he start? Like, why didn't he start more? Why was he only coming off the bench? I think realistically speaking, Peter Bosz is a very tactical based manager. He just preferred people last season more than he preferred Bakayoko. I don't think it was because of his ability or anything, because prior to that, Peter Bosz started him 29 games last season where he scored 12 goals and had 9 assists. So I looked into his injury history. He was injured for 1 game last year, and he was injured for 1 game the year previously as well. Also with PSV as well, Noah Lang had a real kind of coming of age season last year, albeit that he does play on the opposite side to Bakayoko. I think it was just kind of a preference from all the teams in the Eredivisie were trying to chase down Ajax, and they successfully did on the last day of the season, where Ajax just absolutely imploded. And I think that's really what it was, that there was more kind of a tactical base put in. And that's not to denigrate Johan Bakayoko in any way, because when we look at players, and if you were to look at game time and so on, and performance from season to season, if you're going to just look at the goals and assists and things like XG and things like that, you won't get around it. And I've said this time and time again, you will not get a rounded view of that player, because tactics have an awful lot to play into a player's development. I suppose even somebody here at 22 years of age, he's just gone 22 since last April as well. So it has an awful lot to do with development. And what I see from this guy is what Aston Villa need. PSV, obviously the PSV manager thought that they needed something different, maybe from a more experienced player last season in that position. So don't just go on minutes played, on games started, and total matches and stuff like that, and then write a player off, because we've seen it time and time again that, progression isn't linear, specifically with younger players. I think that's fair to say from Johan Bakayoko, because last year he was absolutely scintillating. As I said, 12 goals, 9 assists. He was being linked with 80-90 million pound moves, and they didn't transpire. He didn't want to leave PSV at the time. And then we have a situation then where PSV then obviously PSV their manager changes up their tactics slightly. They play somebody a bit different, and now there's talks that PSV have a clause in there that he can go for 17 million this year. So we'll see what happens from that point of view. But from an Aston Villa point of view, he is definitely somebody that we would look at from his strengths and weaknesses. As I say, strengths, once again, just explosive one-on-one dribbling. I'm going to bring up his statistics here actually as I'm talking about them, because it's an interesting piece to look at him from the point of view that it's very much like he's very much an attacking player. His defensive ability is something that he's going to have to learn. But then again, like I'm signing him to be an attacking winger. I'm kind of at the stage here now whereby look, if our pivot players, if we're going to go with 3 attacking ball carriers in behind Ollie Watkins, or ball carriers or people who can make things happen behind Ollie Watkins, then our 2 pivot players are going to need to help out our fullbacks. And it shouldn't be always down to those wingers to come back, because, you know, why are we playing those 2 pivot players there if we're looking for everybody to filter back? And I know we can have discussion after discussion after discussion on that tactic as well. I know people will be old school and say the defender or the winger has to come back and help out his fullback, and that will happen. But what I'm saying is that there's obviously room for this guy to go forward. We can see it there in his heat map where he likes to cut in and he likes to play and drive towards that box. And I think that he will be a very, very well suited player in Unai Emery's system. Beats the man on the outside with pace, or else he's able to dribble inside with tight control as well. And we can see there that his successful dribble rate is 49%, which is something that you know, when we look at other Aston Villa players, Morgan Rogers in particular, Morgan Rogers' successful take-on rate last year was 43.7%. So look, we're talking about, you know, an extra 4%, extra 10% of what's of Morgan Rogers on top of that again. So I like that. I like the fact that it's that Aston Villa are being linked to players who can dribble the ball and are being linked to players who have shown a capability to do it naturally, as opposed to players that, you know, maybe forced to be ball carriers. And this isn't a case of this fella playing over Malin. I think Malin will then probably move in towards that reserve striker role, or would obviously dovetail with somebody like Bakayoko. He's a Belgian international, but you know, as I say, Malin has a lot more miles in the clock. He's got a lot more experience in there. I'm not saying that this guy would come in here and be an absolute starter day one. I'm saying that this guy is something that other players don't have in the team, and that's that latent out and out dribbling ability, also with the ability to take a shot. And when we look there as well, you know, he's played 172 games, started 128 in his career, scored 50 goals and has 30 assists. That's a damn good return rate, I think, and it's eerily similar to what we'll see from Igor Pacheco as well later on. But the guy as well, another one of the big things that I saw from him from PSV is that he was a massive outlet, that when PSV were under pressure, he would kind of back off into the just kind of the edge of the defensive and midfield kind of third. He would receive the ball and he would be a huge calming outlet for that team, where he would be able to take that ball, turn, carry it forward, allow the defense to get out, allow the consternation, I suppose, sometimes to kind of filter down towards from the defensive area, and he became that outlet. Aston Villa only have one of those players currently at this moment in time, and that is Morgan Rogers. And Villa need to become multifaceted in there with the ability to have players, if Morgan Rogers isn't having a good game, that somebody else can come and carry that ball. You take Morgan Rogers out of it. Jacob Ramsey did it a small bit last year, but it's really been the Morgan Rogers show with regards to dribbling that ball last year. And we need somebody who can come in and can replicate that, or can even build upon it. And this guy in the Eredivisie and also in the Champions League last year was able to more than replicate that whenever he got the ball at his feet. So an incredibly interesting player. We can look at him here in comparison to Leon Bailey and to Morgan Rogers. We can see here, obviously gets a lot more shots away, was tasked with an awful lot more work. We just look over there at his touches, 63.84 touches per game is a monumental amount of workload. That's why for a 22-year-old to be trusted with that amount of work, and granted as well, guys, remember that he only started 17 games. So it wasn't the case as if Peter Bosz was putting this guy in and there was no plan for him in there. It wasn't the case as if Peter Bosz was putting him in, he didn't fancy him. There was obvious, for me, looking back at the games, it was obvious that he was taking a 22-year-old and playing him in games where he felt it was fortuitous for him, or it was opportunistic for him as well to get in there, and B, because he had upgraded his squad. And I think that's fair enough when you look back at it. And you guys might have different opinions on it, but you know, go away and watch 6, 7, 8 games of his over the course of last season, and then come back and we can chat about any of your findings on it as well, because I am open to talking more about this guy, and I will be talking more about this guy with Football Oranje, Michael from Football Oranje later on in the week as well, because I think the two guys here are really interesting profiles of players that Aston Villa should be going for. When we look here as well about his shots on target, so Leon Bailey last year had a 24% shot on target rate. Morgan Rogers had a 35%. This guy's up at 45% shots on target, which is quite good. You know, even when you look at the strikers, or you know, you're looking at the top wingers in European football, the Rafinhas and that, like, you know, they had it in around a 45% shot on target rate, and it wasn't as if he was only being deliberate in when he was taking shots. Previously, I've done a podcast on somebody like a Lucas Stasson, who you guys know I'm absolutely in love with, and he did he was somebody who took very few shots, but when he took them, they were on target. You know, so this guy takes an awful lot of shots, right up there in the top 4% for all wingers in Europe's in European football, and 45% of those were on target. I think we also want, and Unai Emery wants more precise strikers of the ball, and he wants people who can get those shots on target, because we were very limited in what we could do, because we weren't very good at keeping our shots on target last year, specifically for any shots from outside the box. When we look at this guy, his average shot distance is 18.3 meters out as well. So it's like he shoots from the edge of the area. And I think that's something we need to develop in our game, because we were very much walk it in at times. And as I say, he generates the shot and that power from very minimal backlift, which also catches teams off and unawares and off balance. And when we are actually attacking, specifically in transition and specifically in counter attack, because you know, he's very good at diagonal runs across the defense as well. And that's why when I said at the start that I could see him being used as a striker in time to come, maybe as more of a false nine type in time to come, because of his diagonal runs across centre halves are very intelligent, and that's something that, you know, go and watch him do that, because when you watch him do it, it doesn't seem like it's as deliberate, but it does cause consternation in the in the backline, defending backlines as well. One thing I loved about him was he always looked very positive on the field. And what I mean by that is, and you know, I'm not a huge body language person, but what he looked like was he always wanted the ball. He always looked like he was enjoying having the ball. He looked like he enjoyed being a focal point. It didn't burden him. It didn't wear down on him. He relished it. And I like that level of that kind of cockiness, if you want to call it, because there's been times I won't say times, nearly every single game that Leon Bailey has played this season, and there was times last year when his confidence was down. You could see when he wasn't confident, he wasn't playing very well, and he needed to be really confident to play well. So you know, this guy's or the opposite. He knows what he can do. He knows what he can't do, and he demanded that ball. And as you can see it there, 63.84 touches in the game were because of his proactivity in getting into positions to get the ball, making things happen, and being a what looks like very coachable type of player from that point of view. Now, obviously, there are weaknesses to his game as well. Like, his shot selection can be raw at times. Like, I know he gets shots on target, but sometimes it's a case of put your laces through it, as I mentioned before, when you know, a bit more finesse in his game will come with time as well. Because I said it's not that he can't do it; it's that it's just the shot selection point as well. When he's crossing the ball, his crosses can be a bit floaty. They can be very much back post type crosses as well. You know, I don't think that's a massive game changer for me. I think it's very easy to develop a low driven cross. Specifically under Unai Emery, he will absolutely beat that into you. You know, cutbacks to the edge to the penalty spot. But of the games I saw, it wasn't something that he seemed to favour. Can he do it? I'm absolutely sure he can. But once again, I'm an evidence-based scouter, so I want to see it on the field with my own two eyes as well. Defensive capability. The reason that I mentioned about, you know, the two pivots would need to come into their own, specifically if we're going having two out and out wingers there, is because with Bakayoko and arguably with Paixão as well, that, you know, the intensity of their defensive work will diminish the further back that they have to track. It's Taylor's oldest time for a stereotypical, you know, winger as such. Now what I mean by that is that he'll press eagerly. He will press high up the field, but once he gets to turn and get backwards and backtrack as well, he's going to need to improve that. That's a frivolity of youth at 22 years of age as well. That's probably a byproduct, I think, an awful lot of wingers and strikers. The byproduct of that is that because they are the focal point in the attacking game, they've had other people to mop up the defensive game. So it's one area that I think both of the players that I'm going to speak about will have to brush up on as well. But like, once again, they're all coachable traits. If you want it enough, you want to succeed in the Premier League enough, well, then that's something that you're going to have to do. And albeit as well, tactics will play a great role in that too as well. So he hasn't had any major injuries either. So, as I say, an incredibly interesting type of player, Bakayoko. I would love you guys to go away and watch him. Go away, even find YouTube clips in him. But, I don't have any problem with people looking at YouTube clips. I don't have any problem with anybody having a different opinion to me. God knows, I say, like, anybody can be right in this game. I certainly don't claim to be right on everything, but I only tell you guys what I see, both in the numbers and if they transfer to what happens on the field as well. And somebody like Johan Bakayoko could be a real asset to the Premier League with his pace, his physical characteristics, along with the numbers that show here what he does well Aston Villa need. And he has built up a repertoire of doing that in the Eredivisie over the last 3 years. So he's somebody that, if the rumors are true, and I don't know whether they are, and we're talking about it because of his player profile, it will be an interesting signing for Aston Villa. Before I finish up, I'm just going to come to some of your comments because I don't want to ignore them completely. British Mick asks, new camera, look pristine. No, I just turned off my lights up above. So I think maybe that might be it. I'm not 100% sure. Gigs Sharma asked me, would I take Bakayoko, Paxiao, or Garnacho, or none? Can I add in Jesus Rodriguez as well there, please? Because I like all four of those players that Bakayoko, Paxiao, Garnacho, Jesus Rodriguez. I want pace, I want power, I want carrying ability in my team. And that's the excitement that I feel Villa need to introduce into their game now, that ball carrying ability. And it's difficult and it is tough, and it's the reason why Pep Guardiola has found it difficult to introduce that into his team too. And that's throughout his time as a manager. That's why he goes with tiki-taka football, the more possession-based football. But that works for him, and he's absolutely made that his own and completely transformed the game of football. I think the game of football is ripe for good attacking wingers again. I really do. I really think it is. I really think with the modern trends of inverted fullbacks, make them honest and have somebody who can attack down that wing. And keep teams honest and make sure that, right, if you are going to be a team that's going to be possession based and you lose that ball, that your centre halves are going to be absolutely shitting a brick, that they're going to have to come out and greet somebody near the touchline, and that person is going to have fleet of foot, is going to be able to go around them, because for every innovation there's always another innovation that can come up and can blunt it. And I think we're getting to the stage where the inverted fullback is being blunted and can be blunted even more by more progressive wingers, I think. Where else are we? Sorry there, guys. Sorry there. I'm just coming down. Carrie asked Neil, isn't that hoodie great? Best of all. Do you know what? Actually, yeah, these are this DNA wear range is absolutely brilliant. It is one of the best hoodies I've bought in a long time. Fits like a glove, and yeah, I know that's completely off topic as well. Right, I'm going down to the comments there, and here's one from Moby. Is he clear upgrade on Bailey? He's a clear upgrade on Bailey of last year, and the reason for that is that Bailey of last year, I think his confidence in both his hamstrings and the fact that he was putting pressure on himself to perform every time he came into the team, over pressurizing himself. We didn't see the same Leon Bailey last year. And of the 4 years that Leon Bailey's been here, I'm trying to think, is it 4 years? Yes, 4 years. We've had one good season. And I think that there's both player and team would freshen up that area. And if we do freshen up that area, I think that Leon Bailey has a lot more left in the tank in his career. I think he would look for pastures new. So yes, is what I would say on that one. Perfect. Right, guys, I am going to leave it at that one. There is another one. If you go in and you click on, if you're on YouTube and you go in and you click on the podcast symbol there's another up and coming one here. I just made a mess of the streams. I wanted to do the two of these together, but I set up two streams. So I'm going to see you over in that other stream in 2 seconds. And we're going to talk about Igor Pacheco. So thanks so much, everybody, for watching and for listening. We'll be back with the next podcast over on the other link. So you'll have to click into the other link and we'll see you there in the next few seconds. So thanks very much, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, and all that's left to say is up the